Hi, and thank you for tuning in to the Daily Dose for Spiritual Growth. This week, we're talking about friendship, something we all have in life. Now, I understand that some of you may not have as many friends as you'd like, and some of you might have so many friends you don't know how to manage it all. Well, hopefully, this week, as we look to the Bible to look at some different friendships, you can learn some things that will help and enrich the friendships that you have, and maybe even some ways to get some new ones. Today, we're going to talk again about some relatives, which is actually interesting. Don't worry, that's not every day. Yesterday, I talked about friendships that were also relatives, uncle to nephew. Today, we're talking about some family members that started off as relatives, but because of tragedy, it really ended up becoming just a deep friendship. Talking about Ruth and Naomi. Now, if you're familiar with the Bible, maybe you're familiar with their story. It's found in the book of Ruth, which is only a couple chapters long. You could actually curl up with a cup of coffee and read it in one sitting. But I'm going to begin today by reading Ruth chapter 1 so we can hear about our main characters, which is Naomi and her daughter-in-law, Ruth. Go ahead and start with me in verse 1. It says, "In the days when the judges ruled in Israel, a severe famine came upon the land. And so a man from Bethlehem in Judah left his home and went to live in the country of Moab, taking his wife and his 2 sons with him. The man's name was Elimelech, and his wife was Naomi. Their 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion. They were Ephrathites from Bethlehem in the land of Judah, and when they reached Moab, they settled there. Then Elimelech died, and Naomi was left with her 2 sons. The 2 sons married Moabite women, which were women from that land. One married a woman named Orpah, and the other a woman named Ruth. But about 10 years later, both Mahlon and Chilion died. This left Naomi alone without her 2 sons or her husband. She's experiencing extreme grief and loss. But let's see what happens. Then Naomi heard in Moab that the Lord had blessed his people in Judah by giving them good crops again. So Naomi and her daughter-in-laws got ready to leave Moab to return to her homeland. With her 2 daughters-in-law, she set out from the place where she had been living, and they took the road that would lead them back to Judah. But on the way, Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-laws, 'Go back to your mother's homes, and may the Lord reward you for your kindness to your husbands and to me. May the Lord bless you with security of another marriage.' And then she kissed them goodbye, and they all broke down and wept. 'No,' they said, 'we want to go with you to your people.' But Naomi replied, 'Why should you go with me? Can I still give birth to other sons who could grow up to be your husbands? No, my daughters, return to your parents' homes, for I am too old to marry again. And even if it were possible and I were to get married tonight and bear sons, then what? Would you wait for them to grow up and refuse to marry someone else? No, of course not, my daughters. Things are far better for me than for you, because the Lord himself has raised his fist against me.' And again they wept together, and Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye. But Ruth clung tightly to Naomi. 'Look,' Naomi said to her, 'your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. You should do the same.' And this, in verse 16, is one of the most famous verses. Maybe you've heard it. It says, 'But Ruth replied, "Don't ask me to leave you or turn back. Wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you live, I will live. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. Wherever you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord punish me severely if I allow anything but death to separate us." When Naomi saw that Ruth was determined to go with her, she said nothing more, and so the two of them continued on their journey. This story is really remarkable because it screams loyalty. You see, in life, so often we're loyal if we feel people deserve it. But the moment that they stop being loyal to us or things get rough, oftentimes we'll say, bye. Really, that's what our culture says. It talks a lot about self-love, right? If people aren't treating you the way you want, if you're not getting what you want out of a relationship, don't fight for it. Don't work for it. Let it go and move on to something better. That greener pasture always in the distance. But the Bible doesn't really talk a lot about self-love. It talks about love of the Lord and sacrifice. You see, in this situation, Ruth had every right to say bye to Naomi. What Naomi could provide for her was her sons and that home, that money, that provision, that place to be. But when those sons were gone, Naomi really had nothing left that she could offer Ruth. But Ruth never stopped being loyal. Do you have friendships in your life where people stick it out through the thick and the thin? You see, it's great to be surrounded by people when you have a lot and things are going good and life is merry. But what about when things get rough? What about when you face loss or grief? Who remains? What about when you're not able to give as much as you used to give and you actually need help? Who is still there? Loyalty is really a lost virtue in our culture today. We tend to only give when we know we're going to get. How could you become a more loyal friend? What friendships do you have right now that need help, that need support, that need encouragement? Maybe you have some friends right now that are going through very difficult situations and you just don't know what to do or what to say. How could you be loyal and supportive to them? Maybe you're on the other side of that coin and you're saying, Pastor Sarah, I feel alone. I'm going through a difficult time. Maybe you're facing depression. Maybe you're facing grief. Maybe you face some financial difficulty or struggling in your marriage and you feel very isolated and you're looking for who is left. I encourage you that loyalty is a quality that you should look for in a friend, someone who will stay and remain. God is the perfect example of loyalty if you're wondering what that looks like. Maybe it's been a while since you've experienced it. You see, the Word of God says that He'll never leave you. He'll never forsake you, but His faithfulness is constant. Right now, if you're in a season where you look around at your circle and you're like, I don't have a friend that's here, look to God and allow Him to be your very best friend, for Him to teach you to trust again, for Him to allow you to lean on Him again, so that you can muster up the strength to then in turn be a friend that's loyal to others. Hey, I want to thank you so much for tuning in today, and I hope to see you again tomorrow for another daily dose for spiritual growth.